You're locked in to the hottest station on the planet.
Resistance is futile. The revolution has begun.
You're listening to Rebelpreneur Radio, helping you break the rules and build the business you need for the life you want. And now, broadcasting his pirate signal
from somewhere beyond the status quo,
here's your host, best-selling author, marketing and media strategist, Ralph Brogden.
Hello and welcome to Rebelpreneur Radio. It's the show that helps you build the business you need so you can live the life you want. I am Ralph Brogden. Well, you know, my tagline is, we're going to break the rules and build a business. But there's one rule that you don't break. Breaking the rules doesn't mean breaking the law. And we've got a serious cultural problem with sexual harassment in the workplace. I want to bring in an expert on this who is really making a revolutionary change in how we think about it, how we deal with it, and how we ultimately are going to resolve this. I'm speaking today with Meredith Holley. She is a lawyer, a power dynamics facilitator, and a best-selling author. She's the founder of Eris Conflict Resolution, where she works with businesses to resolve crisis interpersonal conflict and empower employees to stop sexual harassment without quitting their jobs. Meredith's first book, Career Defense 101, How to Stop Sexual Harassment Without Quitting Your Job, was recently released in bookstores, and it's a real pleasure to have Meredith on the show with us today. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
And you have someone with you as well that I learned about off air. Maybe you'd like to introduce your very special guest.
Yeah, so I have a brand new little puppy here with me who likes to make her voice heard sometimes. Her name's Pema. Right now she's chewing on her favorite bone, so she seems distracted. But if you hear her, she just wants to solve sexual harassment too.
There you go. Sure. All right. I love it. Well, I wanted to bring her in and include her as well. So if she has any input, we will, we are happy to hear from her as well. So, you are an attorney, and you're the founder of Eris Conflict Resolution. Tell us a little bit about what got you interested in law, first of all, and then what made you focus on sexual harassment, and then your very different approach is not to litigate, but to work through and resolve through conflict resolution techniques and other things that you bring that are very different from what typical law firms will do. So tell us all about yourself.
Yeah, so my main mission is to help employees stop toxic work environments, stop sexual harassment, so that the good employee, the employee who's not creating the problems, can stay, can do their work, and so it doesn't interfere with the productivity of these good businesses often that are experiencing this problem. One of the major myths that I see a lot of businesses have, a lot of people have, is that sexual harassment happens in evil companies and it happens to weak, stupid people. And what I really see is that there are like sexual harassment happens in good companies. It can happen to anybody. And I started, so I went to law school. I became a lawyer because I wanted to help people. It's sort of the cliche thing that you hear from lawyers. And when you go to law school, you hear, you think you're going to help people now, but the law is so limited. You can't really help that much. And when I actually started litigating cases, when I became a lawyer, I kind of saw the evidence of that. A lot of times what happens to people who have experienced some pretty extreme abuse at work is they're basically told you can quit your job and go get a better job, or otherwise you just have to deal with it. And then if they quit or they get fired and they litigate, really all we can give them is money under the law. Like we're just limited to that under the law. And money is sometimes really important to give to people, but often it's not enough. And so, for example, I had one client who was, she ended up getting this great settlement from her company. She was sexually harassed for 8 years in her job. She left the company after this settlement, and she became agoraphobic. She couldn't leave her house. And so in my mind, what good was this settlement if she can't even use it, if she can't leave her house and go to the grocery store? How am I helping her?
It creates damage on a lot of different levels and not just financial. So you're really, I mean, it's better than nothing, but it really, the typical legal solution doesn't always restore the person and make them whole again, does it?
Yeah. No, it doesn't. And people, it's hard to get counseling and therapeutic support in a lot of areas. It's hard to navigate insurance. And so what I really believe is that as providers, as like legal service providers, even as whatever business we're in, we meet a lot of people who have experienced trauma. And so I think it's our obligation to become informed about how to help people if they're willing to talk to us. So my goal is always to meet employees at the earliest possible time when they're starting to experience some kind of behavior that they don't want to tolerate, that they don't appreciate, that they think is disrespectful, whether it's sexual harassment or not. Most people don't think of behavior that they're experiencing as sexual harassment because it's such a vague legal term. We don't even know what it means, you know? And so, so I always want to meet people earlier and earlier and help them how I can.
Now, you have a personal interest and a personal connection to this work based on your own experience. And would you mind sharing some general background on that and tell us about that and how that affected your career path?
Yeah. So early on in my legal career, I got this dream job as a civil rights lawyer. And it sort of was beyond what I even thought was possible in my career. You know, I was so excited about it. It was just the ideal job. When I went to law school, I was working as a legal assistant and I was bored and I wanted a challenge. And I sort of thought, well, maybe I'll fail out of law school. Who knows? But I ended up doing really well in law school. And then I got this dream job. And so I was representing women in sexual harassment lawsuits. And the problem was that I was being sexually harassed at the same time by one of my bosses. And so for me, it was this humiliating experience. I thought, you know, I'm a lawyer. I should know how to deal with this. I had been sexually harassed in the past. Like most women have experienced something like that. But I had never had a situation where I didn't feel like I had the tools to resolve it, to really tell this person to stop touching me, which I had never experienced before. After college, I was a Peace Corps volunteer and I lived in Ukraine. And there was this one incident where I literally kicked somebody off of me. And so I had always been this like tough person. But for me in this job, because I loved the work, because I cared about what I was doing, I was really afraid that if I stood up for myself, if I said anything, if I stopped the behavior, I would get fired. And then my clients, who were these vulnerable people, would be left with this man who would harass them too. So what happened was, so I went to other lawyers, I went to other employment lawyers, and I said, you know, I know how we file lawsuits for people after they get fired because of discrimination. I know how we advise someone about quitting a job in a way that could protect their legal rights. But how do we teach people how to stop harassment when they want to keep their job, when they want to stay and just be safe at work? And what I heard was, we don't know how to do that. We don't teach people how to do that because we don't know. And, you know, things are just really sexist and you just deal with it the best you can. And I thought that cannot be the answer. Like, we have human brains that have invented the iPhone. Like, for sure, there is some kind of solution to this, to like how we get somebody to stop giving us back rubs. that we don't want without getting fired.
Yeah.
There has to be a solution. But it took me about a year to really find tools that worked. And then once I did, I was able to encounter the experience in a different way. And my harasser ended up apologizing and not touching me anymore. And then we were able to work together for years after that.
Wow. So that experience and you basically having to navigate uncharted waters to figure out how to resolve this, it actually had a great ending, and that led to you founding Eris Conflict Resolution to help businesses and to help empower employees to resolve these conflicts and to train them about, I guess, what is and what is not acceptable. Tell us a little bit more about how that works. How is this different from what every other attorney might suggest?
Yeah. So what you often see happen if you go to a lawyer for an employment issue is the lawyer is looking at whether you will likely win a case or not. So a lawyer is looking at, is a jury going to like this person? Is a jury going to believe this person? Can this person tell their story in a way that makes sense? And what you see is people who have experienced the most severe trauma do the least well at telling their stories.
That is so powerful, because as I'm sitting here listening to you describe this, my background is strategic communication. And specifically, I'm interested in narrative persuasion. Narratives inform our beliefs and behaviors. They tap into emotions. And what you're saying is so profound that people who have the greatest trauma typically do the worst when it comes to telling their story. And you're saying that that's a problem in the legal profession.
It creates a huge barrier to access to justice for people who have experienced chronic abuse or who have experienced really severe abuse. And the research is there that shows that the way our brains react to trauma protectively segregates memories in a way that makes stories sound like lies, even when they're truth, when people have experienced trauma. So what I found, I started integrating the tools that I used to stop harassment in my own experience to help my clients who had experienced trauma tell their story more clearly and more accurately in a way that was like linear. Because we're usually looking for a linear story, and traumatized brains tell a story in lateral ways. They jump around. And so as I started doing that, I saw people who had experienced severe trauma able to tell their stories more clearly and more accurately in a way that a jury could process. So that helped them have greater access to justice. And then from there, I really decided that because this worked so well, I would rather see my clients able to solve these problems at the earliest possible stage rather than, if they can, rather than having to litigate something. So I do still take cases to litigation stage when they need to. And I just think that that's sort of one more step in setting boundaries. And you had asked me, like, you had mentioned behavior that we should tolerate and behavior that we shouldn't tolerate. And I think a lot of people look for bright line rules about that. For example, 100% never touching in the workplace, or 100% never mentioning gender or race in the workplace. And those kind of strict rules don't really work, because some people want to have a hug sometimes or something, and other people think it's important to have thorough conversations about gender or race or really sensitive topics. And if we're banning certain behaviors, certain conversations across the board, it can actually create a worse situation. And so what I teach people to do is just to be very open about what they want to tolerate and what they don't want to tolerate, and so that each employee can enforce safety and what safety means to them.
How big is this problem? Is it getting worse? Is it getting better? What is your sense?
I mean, I tend to think that humans are humans and that human brains just have discrimination in them, like are discriminatory. So we teach kids matching when they're little, and discrimination is basically matching based on false correlations, right? So if I see someone with a yellow shirt do well at a math test, then I might think people with yellow shirts are good at math, but it's not true. And so that's basically what discrimination is we're making a false correlation. But what we know from the Me Too movement is, like, they did research studies and polling after the Me Too movement happened. And the results were basically 81% of women say that they've been sexually harassed, and about 1 in 5 women leaves a career because of sexual harassment. And then when you look at the numbers compared to race, for example, the numbers are much worse when it comes to race. So the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, which is the federal agency that handles employment discrimination issues, gets about 3,000 or 4,000 more complaints related to race every year than gender. And so we don't have as good polling around race, but you can extrapolate that if 1 in 5 women is leaving a career because of sexual harassment, that it's much worse when it comes to race-based harassment.
And in terms of sexual harassment in the workplace, I'm going to take a wild guess that this is more of an issue for women than it is for men, although there may be some cases of men being sexually harassed in the workplace. This is more of a male on female issue. It's more pervasive. It affects more females than males. Is that accurate?
I think that's an interesting question, and really, so you see in the workplace men typically in positions of greater power, and that's just how we've traditionally structured businesses. Now you have men as CEOs and men as managers and women in lower level positions, which makes the women in lower level positions and the women as they climb up and become potential threats to the men more vulnerable. So I think in that sense, you may be right. But what we also see is that men are more reluctant and feel more humiliated to report that they've experienced sexual harassment. So the numbers and the polling is much lower of men reporting that they've experienced sexual harassment. But there's some question of whether those numbers are accurate, because men are often taught that they can't be sexually harassed or sexually assaulted, and that men have to always want sexual interest or sexual contact. So when I work with men, I do have male clients, not infrequently. I almost always have male clients, and they experience the exact same trauma that my female clients do. They have the exact same sense of, I should be able to solve this. I shouldn't have this problem. This is too humiliating. I should be tougher. I should be smarter. I should be able to figure this out on my own. And so my suspicion is that men experience it much more than what is reported.
Very interesting. What if someone's listening to this and they resonate with what you're saying? They can relate to questionable things going on in their business, in their workplace, or perhaps someone that's running a business and is concerned about the culture. And what would you say to them? And what are some things that they can begin to think about and move in the right direction before this becomes a huge issue for them? Yeah.
So the main thing that I teach people is, and this sounds really simple, but it is not very easy. Don't ignore it. Talk about it. If there is something that is a problem or a potential problem or a problem you want to prevent, open up the conversation and start talking about it. If it's too scary, if it's too intimidating to talk about it, then really have some awareness about that. And sometimes talking about if you're experiencing some kind of behavior that feels unsafe or feels threatening in the workplace, sometimes talk about it means just tell your best friend, tell your mom, open a conversation with somebody. It doesn't have to be somebody at work to start out. But what we tend to do is we think if I ignore it, it'll go away. I might have misunderstood. That probably didn't happen. And as we're ignoring things, they just get worse and worse. It's like ignoring a broken leg and walking on it. It's not going to get better. Right. And so for business owners, what this looks like is opening up a safe space for people to talk about this.
Very good. And not the typical joke where the boss says, my door is always open, and then he slams it behind him as he disappears.
Yeah.
We've got to really get serious about creating a safe place for people and for all people, regardless of gender, regardless of race, regardless of ethnicity. We've got to respect and create respectful working relationships with people, because we should have arrived to this point by now. And it's really exciting that you're taking such a different approach to actually solving the problem and not just coming along after the damage has been done to try and address this legally. That's just one tool in your toolbox, but I really love how you are taking this to a completely different level. You're the author of Career Defense 101, How to Stop Sexual Harassment Without Quitting Your Job. What are you working on right now that has got you really excited that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Yeah, so I just finished and launched my second book, which is called The Inclusive Leader's Guide to Healthy Workplace Culture. And in this book, I teach, in Career Defense 101, I teach employees how to really engage in the workplace and protect their careers from harassment and discrimination. In the new book, in Healthy Workplace Culture, I teach readers how to address other people's harassment, how to be the business owner who creates an inclusive workplace culture, who creates that productivity. We know that losing employees costs businesses about 1/5 of that employee's salary to replace the employee. So this is a huge expense, huge investment that businesses are making if they're ignoring the problem. And so this book just teaches everything that I do to intervene in a workplace setting. And I would love to offer a copy to your listeners. So if they would like to have a copy of the book, they just can go to www.healthyworkplaceculture.com, and it'll just let them download the free book. So it's healthyworkplaceculture.com.
Excellent. Healthyworkplaceculture.com. Free book from attorney Meredith Holley, who is a Power Dynamics facilitator, best-selling author, and founder of Eris Conflict Resolution. This has really been eye-opening, and I hope that our listeners will go and take advantage of that book, get educated and get informed, and work together to make a safe, productive, and profitable workplace, regardless of the size of the business, whether it's a big corporation or whether it's a small business. This is the time has come for us to really address this on a deep level. Any final thoughts or words of wisdom you'd like to leave us with?
Yeah, I would just say a lot of times we believe it's normal to feel anxious and afraid at work. And that is not, it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be normal. We think things are just sexist and you just have to deal with it. And I really want people to know that there are solutions to this. There are ways to create not just a acceptable workplace culture, but something that's really healthy and really safe.
Excellent. Meredith Holley, as I say, is a lawyer, power dynamics facilitator, best-selling author of 2 books, and founder of Eris Conflict Resolution, where she works with businesses to resolve crisis interpersonal conflict and to empower employees to stop sexual harassment without quitting their jobs. You can find out more at erisresolution.com. We'll have that link on the website, and you can download that free book at healthyworkplaceculture.com. Meredith, it's been a real pleasure to have you on Rebelpreneur Radio today. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us.
Thanks so much for having me.
You've been listening to Rebelpreneur Radio with Ralph Brogden. Download the show notes and much more at rebelpreneur.com.